I am an addict. In fact, so are you, each and every one of you. Now, I bet this is not something you expected to hear today at Revenue AI, and you're probably thinking, well, thank you for sharing, Dimitar, but what the hell does this have to do with Revenue AI, generating pipeline, closing opportunities? We'll get onto this in a moment, but before we go any further, I would like to clarify that I do not have a substance abuse problem, and I sincerely hope that you don't either. However, what all of us share in common as sales professionals is a severe addiction to hopium. What is hopium? Hopium is holding on to an opportunity for weeks, sometimes even months on end, and hoping that at the end of it, by some sort of divine intervention, a miracle will happen and that opportunity will get closed won. Sounds familiar? Each and every one of us has done it, and I guarantee you, every single day, your sales team is doing it. Not what you wanted to hear again, but it's a fact. Now, here's what we're going to do in the next 10 minutes. We're going to do a couple of things. Firstly, I will tell you a little bit more about how our brain works, so we can all understand why we developed this weird addiction to hopium, and how it affects our sales performance. And number two, more importantly, I will give you a practical framework which you can bring to your companies tomorrow and introduce this to your teams, and it will help you do a couple of things. It will help you understand the severity of the problem within the organization, and more importantly, treat it. Sounds good? All right, let's do this. So first and foremost, why do we have an addiction to hopium? What is it about hopium? The reason for it is a psychological bias known as the endowment effect. And what the endowment effect does, it severely inflates the perceived value of any opportunity in our possession. Put very simply, once we own something, we rationally tend to overvalue it, regardless of its true objective value. Now, to explain this, I'll give you an example. I'll tell you a little bit more about what is perhaps the most famous study ever conducted to quantify the impact of the endowment effect on decision making. A large experiment was conducted. A group of university students was divided into two, buyers and sellers, and the scientists conducting the experiment endowed the sellers with coffee mugs. They gave them coffee mugs as presents. They then asked them to trade, and when the results came in and they looked at the price the sellers were hoping to get for their beloved coffee mugs that they had just received a couple of minutes ago versus what the buyers were looking to offer, the scientists were quite surprised. The sellers were expecting on average $7.12, while the buyers were only looking to pay $2.87. A discrepancy of 2.5 times, quite significant. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, university students, no real life experience, of course they'll get it wrong. If that's what you're thinking, think again. Virtually the same experiment was conducted a few years later, this time with a group of people which I think would know a thing or two about objective value in trading, second-hand car dealers and property brokers. And the very same discrepancy between owned versus unowned goods was observed 2.5 times. Now, you're probably thinking, well, does this affect my sales performance, or how does this affect my sales performance and my team sales performance? Well, we were asking the same question ourselves last year, so in God we trust, everyone else bring data. We decided to look at the deal flow of some 105 different sales organizations, and what we found out was quite interesting. In order to do this, we basically looked at the average time it takes for a deal to be closed won versus the average time for a deal to be closed won. Now, we of course expected it would take a lot longer for a deal to be declared closed lost, as you probably guess. And you can see it by the data here. You can see that everything is shifted to the right on this histogram, so it does support the theory that lost opportunities takes longer to be closed in your CRM. However, what we wanted to do is to dig a level deeper. So what we did is we looked at the median time for an opportunity to be declared closed lost versus the median time for an opportunity to be declared closed won. And any guesses what we found out? The difference was exactly 2.7 times. Pretty much identical to the studies I just quoted. So here's the bad news, guys. Salespeople, just like everyone else, are not immune to the effects of the endowment effect, and just like everyone else, we tend to overbet on sales opportunities that are in our possession compared to the same opportunities if we didn't have them in our name in the CRM. So bad news, unfortunately. What's worse, or I should say more interesting, is once you introduce deal size into the equation, things get a little bit more interesting. So if you look at this graph, you will clearly see that the bigger the opportunity size, the longer we tend to hold on to it. So the larger the hopium effect, which again is bad news for everyone here who's in enterprise sales, including ourselves. Now, what can you do about this? How do you fix it? Well, the first thing you should do is to try to diagnose yourself. And in order to do that, you need to start tracking one simple metric, which I'm sure none of you are tracking, or at least 9 out of 10 people are not tracking. Everyone, if I asked everyone here to tell me what the duration of their sales cycle is, I guarantee each and every one of you will know, right? Hands up if you know how long your sales cycle is. Yeah, pretty much everyone. However, if I ask you how long does it take for an opportunity on average to be lost, how many people know? 2? I rest my case. So the first thing you should be doing, as soon as you get into the office tomorrow, is to start tracking your average time to lose an opportunity. The reason why you want to be doing this is so that you can then measure what we call your endowment multiplier. And what is the endowment multiplier? Essentially, that's a proxy of how blinded your sales organization is by the effect of the endowment effect. The way you calculate it is to divide your average time to lose an opportunity by the average time to win an opportunity. And here you have it, that's your endowment multiplier. Now, the way you read it is, as a rule of thumb, you don't want to end up with an endowment multiplier greater than 2.7, just as in the studies I quoted earlier. 2.5, 2.7, nothing more than that. If you see an endowment multiplier greater than that, that's a telltale sign that your team, your sales reps are holding on to opportunity for a lot longer than they should, and they're working the wrong opportunities. The next thing you want to do is to use that framework to start diagnosing what we call clinically dead opportunities. So how do you do it? It's pretty straightforward. Any opportunity in the CRM that has been live for longer than 2.7 times 2.5, as I said, it depends on how aggressive you want to be with it. Anything that has been live for 2.7 times should be deemed clinically dead. And what I mean by this clinically dead opportunity? Well, I want to tell you about another study that we conducted earlier this year. In January, we looked at some 60,000 odd opportunities that have passed through Heresy. And using the same framework, we identified just over 5,000 opportunities that were pronounced dead in the month of January. And what we did then was to basically track them over the course of the next 4 months, just to see what happens with them. Any guesses? Come on, guys, don't be shy. Say that again?
They reopened them.
Well, kind of. So I'll tell you what happened. So very small percentage, 2.2% of the opportunities that were declared clinically dead by this method actually ended up being closed won. So 2.2%, and don't be fooled, like 2.2% is minuscule compared to the remainder. So if you think of the famous saying, Archimedes famously said, give me a long enough lever and a place to rest it and I'll lift earth. Give me a long enough sales cycle and I'll close any opportunity. So that 2.2% should not distract you. Here's the interesting thing. 7% of the opportunities actually ended up being declared closed lost in the following 4 months by the reps themselves. But a whopping 90% of the opportunities actually remained open and just as dead as they were back in January. So what does this all mean? It means that the way we see it, the number one reason for your teams to not meet their quota at the end of a month or quarter is not necessarily lack of activity or thin pipeline. It's what we call a hollow pipeline. The opportunities are there, but they have been long dead. They're dead opportunities, which is what I mentioned earlier. So what do you do with it? I'll leave you with this one. Pretty straightforward. Anything which has been declared clinically dead by the framework I described should be discarded. Ideally, your reps should basically stop working that opportunity because, as we said statistically, the chances of it actually being successfully closed won are less than 3%. And they should free up some more space to work new, fresh opportunities that can actually generate revenue and help you get that quota. Better yet, you should definitely not counting towards your forecast. And I'll leave you one final thought, just to see how widespread this problem is. When we actually looked at committed deals at the beginning of a forecasting cycle by teams using Heresy in the past, what we've seen is that using this framework, 26% of all the opportunities that, on average, a team commits at the beginning of a forecasting cycle to be closed won, and that count towards their forecast, are actually clinically dead. Which explains why, according to Salesforce, 57% of salespeople last year did not make quota. Again, hollow pipeline. So take care of it. I'll leave you with this. If this kind of data speaks to you, you can use this free tool that we've built, heresy.io/diagnose. If you're in Salesforce, one click, we will diagnose your pipeline right away. It will tell you how many dead opportunities you have, what those opportunities are, as well as any opportunities that perhaps are headed that way but are not quite there, and you can save them. And if you want to read more about this, you can go to heresy.io/white paper. There's a pretty solid research behind all of this if you're curious about it. My name is Dimitar Stanimiroff, CEO and co-founder of Heresy, and this was Why Salespeople Are Addicted to Hopium. Enjoy the rest of the conference, guys.